Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here throughout the region and beyond, it's always important to mark that 552 days ago, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates committed the horrendous atrocities of October 7th of 2023. We will discuss, of course, the latest developments also with regard to the hostages, if there are any, and beyond that. But before that, let's introduce our panelists for today, starting from top left to right and then to the bottom. Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly served as the Chief of Intelligence at Mossad, as well as a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. Next to him is Ms. Zineb Riboua, who is a research fellow and the manager of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East at Hudson Institute. And last but not least, a colonel in reserve, Reuven Ben Shalom, who is a cross-cultural strategist and a senior fellow at the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University. And I'd like to start with you, General Sofrin. Let's focus on the Gaza Strip for a moment. It seems that the IDF is increasing its ground maneuvers. It is ensuring the additional levels of pressure against Islamist Hamas and its affiliates in the Gaza Strip. What can you tell us about that?
Indeed, that's what IDF is doing right now. It's going on two different areas. The first one is the northern one. We go back to places that we've been before, like Bet Lahia and Bet Hanun, and now one more time into Shajaiya to try to get out of that all the people that Hamas recruited and were deployed there. And we see one more time that they succeeded in rebuilding the battalions that were deployed there before October 7. And the other effort is going, maneuvering effort is going on the southern part of Gaza Strip, the area of Rafah, trying to get the whole area under full control of the IDF and to demolish this brigade that is being deployed between Han Yunis and Rafah. And one more time, we're going back to the same place that we've been before and fighting one more time. That means that every time we are not present in certain place, you'll find new battalions, new recruits, new weapon systems, and people that are willing to fight. And this is the story of Gaza. Unless we control the whole Gaza Strip, we will find it everywhere that we will return one more time and one more time as well as we do this time.
Thank you, General Sofrin. Ms. Riboua, it seems like negotiations via Qatari and Egyptian mediation are far away from the lens of the public. The presidential envoy of the United States, Steve Witkoff, is focused right now ahead of his talks in Oman with regard to Iran's nuclear program. What is the attention span right now to the ongoing situation of the hostages in the Gaza Strip, considering that there is no much public available information on this regard?
Yeah, well, I would say that from Washington, especially from regarding President Donald Trump, he made very clear since the beginning that this is one issue he's very much concerned about. And he started about the talks and he talked about negotiations way before he reached the White House. So I think that we need to wait. It seems that, as you said, there aren't much public information available. There's also talks with Iran going on, and Saudi Arabia is also. I think the foreign minister was visiting Washington yesterday. So I think that we need to. It's unfortunate, but we will have to wait and see. A lot of things are happening on the ground, especially with an Israel-Turkish rapprochement in Syria. So there are a lot of pieces moving, and I think that that is an indicator that something will happen when it comes to the deal on Gaza.
We will touch base on the Syria file and the Turkish file vis-a-vis Israel, of course, during today's edition. But Colonel Ben Shalom, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz visited southern Gaza Strip, during the course of which he did highlight that the main focus is, first and foremost, of course, to try and release the hostages and to apply additional pressure for that purpose also, if it leads potentially to some sort of breakthrough with regard to the negotiations on this file, but also to increase the security belt surrounding the various territories in which Gazans are currently placed, but also, of course, within the public or the population there are plenty of Islamist elements, the Hamas terror organization, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and others. And at the same time, there are also ongoing efforts, proactive efforts, to facilitate the establishment of President Donald Trump's proposal for the post war Gaza to include also the immigration of Gazans out of their free will into third countries.
Well, what you just did now in framing the question is what we've been trying to do throughout this war, and that's connect the dots. Since no one is giving us a clear roadmap, one of the criticisms towards this government, by the way, is the lack of the day after strategic plan. Yet we must argue also that sometimes these plans could exist but need to be vague. In recent days, we heard several comments, including from Gal Hirsch, the coordinator for the government for the hostage issue, stating quite forcefully, there's a lot going on, but it needs to be under the radar. And we see this in several other elements. You could also see another interesting output from the IDF now, relating to some internal debate inside of Israel. And they said something like, things have to be vague on purpose. They need to be veiled on purpose. So even here, you can understand why they need it to be veiled. Yet you put it very clearly. We have the goals of the war that we still need to promote. That's defeating Hamas militarily and governmentally and returning the hostages. We have the Trump plan that the Israeli government is very clearly saying that they tend to pursue. And you have the IDF acting much more aggressively with the backing of the Americans and with a different kind of tactic on the ground, which is more a footprint, demonstrating to Hamas that they have a lot to lose and stepping up the pressure as maybe a means of negotiations, because we have to assume that there are negotiations. It's just we're trying to bring them to a better deal with us.
Absolutely. Well, General Sofrin, as Ms. Ribois also alluded to just earlier, there are ongoing discussions between Israel and Turkey under the auspices of Azerbaijan, during the course of which an Israeli delegation, led, of course, by Israeli National Security Advisor Tzachi Hanegbi, with a very potent and capable team under him, leading those negotiations on a deconfliction mechanism. What can you tell us about that?
This is an attempt to go back to the mechanism that we used to have with the Russians when they were deployed in Syria. That means, first of all, Israel is drawing a line in the sand and telling the Turkish government or the Turkish delegation that they will not be willing to get deployment of Turkish forces or units south of Damascus to engender Israel and to get into friction with Israel, a direct friction at the Golan Heights front. On the other hand, we want to get to a mechanism that will enable us to act whenever we need in Syria in coordination with the Turkish army. That means that we want to get a freedom of navigation and freedom of action in coordination with them without them being hit by our Air Force or any other elements that are being activated against Syria, and to try to get to some mutual agreement that we can allow both sides to co-live within this neighborhood of Syria in the Golan Heights and north of the Golan Heights.
Indeed, Ms. Ribois, during the course of yesterday's meeting, and this in accordance with a senior official, he said Israel has made it very clear, unequivocally clear to their Turkish counterparts that any change in the deployment of forces, foreign forces in Syria, including in particular the establishment of bases belonging to Turkey in Palmyra, it will be regarded as a red line and the breaking of all the rules. And from Israel's perspective, as it already made clear in the past, that stopping this from happening is the responsibility of Syria, of Damascus in particular, and Israel will. If this doesn't happen, it will put the government of, or interim government of Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, also known as Ahmed al-Shara, in jeopardy. What can you tell us about that?
Well, what I can say is that this is clearly the red line that the Israelis have set, and I think it's a very reasonable red line in the sense that they also want a Syria that is sovereign when it comes to its territory. However, I think from the Turkish perspective, there are still a lot of issues regarding Syria. There are still a lot of proxies going there, and they see it as a real security threat because this is something that Turkey and Israel align on, which is that having a Syria that doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, doesn't have foreign agents and assets and foreign military bases that are operating, and having a government that protects minorities, these are things that I think they both align on. And I think that this is where a deconflicting mechanism can happen, where both Turkey and Israel coordinate, because the aim of a Turkish military base would actually be about counterterrorism and so on. Let's not forget that there are still foreign terrorists that are still operating in Syria. They are in prisons, and the Turks are trying to find a way to mitigate any risks. I think this is something Israel and Turkey also can collaborate on, and I think that of course it seems that it's it's an impossible thing right now, but all things show that a system can be built, and this is, I think, what the President Donald Trump has been pushing when he met Netanyahu and said that he has a great relationship with Erdogan, and if there is something he can do about it, well, I think the president can step up, and I think this is a really a great opportunity, even if the Turkish side seems very hard, and the Israeli rhetoric is very is also very very harsh. I think both actually working together would make the Syria file better than before, than letting it under an Iranian become an Iranian state-led.
Indeed. Well, naturally, both Turkey and Israel don't want to see the Islamic Republic of Iran reemerge in this country, namely Syria. But nonetheless, I think when we're talking about the definitions used vis-a-vis terrorism and hostile elements within this space, I think that Turkey and Israel don't necessarily see the same organizations in that same light, particularly in the talking about Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, for instance, which is a foreign terrorist organization. Israel views it as a jihadist force, while Turkey views it as a positive force that can shape Syria within a stabilized environment. But of course, this does not align with one another. But nonetheless, Colonel Ben Shalom, I'd like to ask you, since there are circulating reports and not only circulating reports, but the United States has downgraded the Syrian mission at the United Nations from a G1 level to a G3 level under the Article 41, 2025, basically rendering it a country or a mission that is held by a government that it does not recognize, making its intentions clear with regard to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. What can you tell us about that, and to what degree does that complicate the matters for Turkey quite a bit?
Well, first, the comments I just heard from my colleague are extremely wise, and I learned from that a lot, and I think there's more to elaborate on that. And it's quite different from the Israeli perspective that usually sees things from our point of view, good guys, bad guys, and of course our intentions are always amazing, and the others just have malign intentions. Sometimes others have interests that they perceive sometimes as vital. And of course, I'm not talking about Iran, that all they want to do is wreak havoc throughout the Middle East.
Absolutely.
Syria and the way they are positioned now diplomatically, it makes sense. I wouldn't say that what's being done now has to do with the long term. It more has to do with hinting to the way that we're perceiving them, or the careful manner in which we're approaching this, because they still have to prove themselves. In the beginning, perhaps many of us made a mistake, or many in the world made a mistake of immediately believing nice suits and beautiful rhetoric. And now we're sort of taking it back a notch and saying, no, this has to be proven. This is a dangerous territory. Still too many players trying to bite off and promote their interest. And ultimately, if we have a jihadist entity on the doorstep of Israel, for us, that's extremely troubling. Remember that Israel has no aspirations for expansion. We don't want to hold any territory. All we want to do is live in peace and quiet. We want stability and security, especially after October 7th. And that's why you see our strategy unfolding in all the arenas, including in Syria. So we have to be extremely careful. As far as Turkey, I just want to say, again, I'll just go back to the comments by Zineb, extremely wise. We have to do this with diplomacy, with a lot of respect, under the radar, under the auspices of other friends and partners. This was carried out in Azerbaijan. And I believe that the more we push to that, to respect and diplomacy, the more we will succeed. Deconfliction means, hey guys, we're friends, or we want to be friends. The last thing we want to do is conflict. So we need to deconflict and make sure we don't meet somewhere by accident.
I want to mention the point about Ilham Aliyev, the leader of Azerbaijan, who really is doing a fantastic job when we're talking about the tensions currently between Turkey and Israel. Azerbaijan is really a stabilizing force in this region, capable of doing much good and being all the while also under threat by the Islamic Republic of Iran, having plenty of disagreements there. But let's move to the next theater, since we are crossing across different fields. Iraq. General Sofrin, when we're looking at various reports, MI6 or British intelligence, as it was publicly stated, leaked to the press that Iran has been rediverting much of its ballistic missiles, or many ballistic missiles, to its proxy in Iraq. Is there truth to that? And if so, what are the calculations?
First of all, I'm not sure that this is the truth. I mean, maybe they deliver some weapon systems and maybe some missiles to their organization or to their proxies in Iraq, namely the Hashd al-Sha'bi organization, which is the roof organization for all these proxies in Iraq. On the other hand, the Iraqi government doesn't want them to escalate. They're very scared of an American or Israeli attack on their soil. They shut up and demolished, or actually excluded, an office that used to be in service of the Houthis in Baghdad, that used to be the communication point between the Houthis and Iran, and they closed it up and they shut it down, and they demolished all, or sent away all the people, all the Houthis, back home, because they were scared that the U.S. is going to attack this office and this focal point in Baghdad that serves the Houthis as part of their strategy against the Houthis. And they're now trying to hold all these proxies of Iran under the control and tell them, please don't escalate, because we're going to suffer attacks either from the US or from Israel. And we see that for the last month, and at least 6 months, no attempt to attack Israel from Iraqi proxies has been made. And that means that everybody is trying to keep calm and not to escalate and not to drag another attack coming out from us or from the United States. But mainly the first priority, of course, will be an attack by Israel.
Ms. Riboua, your take on the Iraqi file?
From what I understand is that there's actually a lot of push in Congress when it comes to tackling Iraq, for the simple reason that Iran, after losing Lebanon, after losing a lot of footprint in so many other places, especially in Syria, they are doubling down on their presence, on their influence, and on infiltrating and subverting the Iraqis. This is something that they've done for a very long time, but I think now it's really under the radar since since Iraq benefits from many programs and aid programs that the United States offers. And so I think that for now, it's really a push from Congress. I'm pretty sure, of course, that a lot of people, the State Department and so on are also looking at it. But I think that as Mr. Safrin mentioned, Iraq is a very vulnerable state that is almost really a failed state in the sense that they cannot control so many areas, the government and the bureaucracy. Sometimes they do not talk to each other, mainly because Iranians have infiltrated the government so much that they made sure that a lot of agents are working for them. So I think that we might see Iraq being part of the discussion in Washington, but again, it will always be under a context where it's about countering Iran, because Iran is so weak right now that making sure that Iraq is free from all of its subversions should be a priority, I would say.
Absolutely. Colonel Ben Shalom, we don't have very much time left, and that's why I would like to shift to Iran proper. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian held a press conference yesterday, during the course of which he did discuss much of the latest developments vis-a-vis the United States. He continues to be adamant about the fact that they're upholding the directives of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to hold indirect talks with the Americans rather than direct talks. But nonetheless, he claims that Iran is a peaceful nation, never seeks to attack anyone, that it doesn't seek a nuclear weapon, that it is apparently one of the best standing nations in the world.
Iran is one of these examples that once in a while I ask myself, do they know they're the bad guys? And of course, they believe they're the good guys. I'm sure they have aspirations to fulfill their calling, which is, jihad throughout the Middle East, to wipe Israel off the map. For them, that's a good thing, of course. They believe that we are a stain in the Middle East. We are a cancer in the Middle East. When we hear this rhetoric as something awful, for them, of course, this is promoting what should be done. It's so easy to understand Iran from this perspective. Now, as far as nuclear weapons, it's just a tool in their arsenal, using the rhetoric, playing with it, toying with it for years, claiming that there's a fatwa against it, and we're not allowed to even by our religion. How could you claim this? Yet they're dashing forward and enriching uranium to weapon grades level, so all the world see what's happening. They're theoretically weeks away from a bomb. Remember just one thing, that they must be powerful internally. They must demonstrate that they're not capitulating to the Americans. That's why even now, what we see now with the rhetoric towards the Americans, it will not show weakness. They will never say to America, "Oh, you threaten us with attacking. Okay, we'll double down. We'll stop." No, they will step up their rhetoric, which is, by the way, if Trump would have been someone else, maybe this would have been dealt with differently. But this powerful approach will be dealt with power. I believe that there's a good chance that this will even lead to something kinetic, which means a strike on Iran. Perhaps that will even be the calculation of Iran, and not show their people weakness, but to show strength.
General Sofrin, you have 1.5 minutes for that.
I think that Iranians are very vulnerable, and they know it, and they know that the Americans are gathering a lot of assets in the Middle East, and they mean business, and they don't just not just show off, and they threaten to use that force. That means that a gun is laid on the table and it is going to shoot, not on the third act, but on the second act. That means if the negotiations are going to fail, we are going to use force, and he claims it openly, and the Iranians understand that. They have the ambition to drag the discussions and the meetings as long as they can, to drag time and to get more prepared for an attack if and when it comes. But nevertheless, this is the aim, and they know that in the end that they will have to give up and to make some concessions. Otherwise, they're going to suffer a huge attack coming out from the Israelis and the Americans as well.
Indeed. That is something that has now been clarified. The United States and Israel will carry this attack together. Will there be additional countries? Probably. Will they be made public? Probably not. But nonetheless, this is something that was always a question mark, and the Iranians are, of course, very concerned about that. Ms. Ribois, I'd like to hear your take on the latest remarks also by U.S. President Donald Trump, who came out and said, it is about asked about a deadline. He said there is a deadline, but nonetheless, they asked him also whether or not he knew when the deadline would be, and he said basically, it's a gut feeling. So it is based on the feeling of Trump whether or not the rhetoric coming out of Iran is genuine or not. So that's going to be very interesting. Go ahead.
I think this is typical Trump, right? He's going to put as much pressure as possible. He's already doing that by squeezing the Islamic Republic regime when it comes to its oil. I mean, they've put in sanctions on China. He knows very well that they don't have, as he says, many cards to play. Israel completely destroyed Hezbollah. They don't have much in Syria left. They are because in the Islamic world, it was still Palestine. That was really the attraction, and that the Islamic Republic is really the hero and the savior of Palestine. All of that is being taken away from them since he's pushing the Gaza plan, and he made a lot of Arab countries excited about it. So there is that, and so he knows very well that they're in a very weak position, and he should really press on their weakness. And of course, I think the Islamic Republic, we know them very well. They will try to buy time. They will try to show that they are ready to negotiate, etc. But at the same time, intelligence will show that they are actually building several facilities for their nuclear program, and they are always planning and finding ways to either damage Israelis and other Arab partners. So he's really testing them here, and it's really a matter of seeing how far this will go and how far the Islamic Republic will either play along or not. So yeah, I think it will be a very interesting negotiation going forward.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about the Iranian effort to somehow illustrate themselves as peacemaking and not pursuing a nuclear weapon, I think the remarks made by IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi always come to mind. It's just technically not credible, but we'll leave it at that. I'd like to thank Colonel Ben Shalom, Ms. Ribois, and General Sofrin, and I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.